Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, which is called Building a Learning Ecosystem with an ILP. I'm Megan. I'm a writer and analyst with Corporate Learning Network, and I have with me Graham Glass, CEO of Cipher Learning. Cipher is innovating teaching and learning worldwide with an ILP, which is an artificial intelligence-enabled learning management system. Graham, can you give me a quick introduction to yourself with a bit of background and expertise and a bit about your company?
Yeah, certainly. So as you mentioned, my name is Graham Glass and I'm CEO of Cipher Learning. We have a cloud-based learning platform. And the reason that I started the company about 10 years ago was I thought that education was a very underserved market, both in K through 20 and in corporate. I thought the technology was generally quite poor. It was quite uninspiring. And I thought we could do a much better job of delivering what's necessary in the Edtech space. I personally used to teach computer science at the University of Texas at Dallas. So I've taught thousands of people one-on-one in kind of old school learning environments. Once I did that, I also founded a training company and trained thousands of people, not just me personally in the training company with my employees, all over America teaching advanced software technology. So I've got quite a bit of experience in higher ed, personally teaching, and quite a bit in corporate. And one of the things that's very unusual about Cipher Learning is we have a single learning platform with two branded versions, one for K through 20 and one in corporate, and they are both award-winning world-class platforms. So I think we're actually the only company in the world that's been able to do that. And as I mentioned, Cipher Learning, we're in 23 countries around the world. We're delivering our learning platform, as you mentioned, called an Intelligent Learning Platform, or ILP. And I'm certainly looking forward to chatting with you all about it in this webinar.
That's awesome. Thank you, Graham. I'm really looking forward to talking about this. To everybody attending, feel free to send questions through the Q&A function on the platform. And the last 15 minutes or so of the webinar, I'll ask Graham the questions. So Graham, I want to start by talking about a topic that is definitely at the core of the ILP, which is upskilling and reskilling. So we know that today's workforce is highly mobile, with staff not only switching positions more frequently than in past years, but also shifting industries and job functions with regularities. Many employees, especially those from the younger generations like millennials and Gen Z, are highly motivated by intrinsic factors such as feeling their work has a purpose. So providing opportunities to upskill and reskill can offer employees this flexibility and purpose while also promoting retention. So just to start us off, in general, how can companies support upskilling and reskilling?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to answer quite a lot of the questions that you're going to be asking me from a personal perspective as well. So I can talk about how other companies, but I know more about Cipher Learning than anybody else. And certainly, you know, we're a very mission-driven company. So we really love the education space, helping kids and people around the world. But I would say, you know, the first thing as far as creating this upskilling and reskilling environment is it's a cultural thing. It starts with the culture, not with the technology. And the culture has got to be that, you know, if somebody wants to get better at their job, you obviously want to encourage them. It makes total sense. But it's more than that. Somebody might say, hey, you know, on the side in my evenings, I would like to take this additional course in, say, digital marketing. Is that something that you can sponsor me for? And generally speaking, that's money very well spent by the company. So we've had quite a few situations where people want to learn a little bit extra on the side, and we'll typically pay for it unless it's some outrageous amount of money. So it starts at the top. It's got to be, hey, we know that things are moving rapidly. We want to give you the tools to be able to kind of upgrade your learning. And I think once you've got it built into the culture, then it's really a ripple effect, which is, well, you know, if we're going to do this, we need some kind of learning platform to facilitate it, because doing it ad hoc just gets out of control. You don't know who's learning what, when they're learning it. You don't know who the experts in your company are, the subject matter, you know, experts. So having a learning platform is step number 2, but step number 1 is really a cultural thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And going on what you're saying about starting from the top and kind of trickling down with the learning culture, I feel like that also lends itself to making sure that learning and upskilling and reskilling are present throughout the whole organization, from the most junior employees, for example, to the management.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that you can actually make pretty apparent when somebody first joins the company. So, you know, at Cipher Learning, we use our own platform, obviously, for our own internal learning. And from the very first moment that somebody onboards, it's very, very apparent that we take learning, that we really embrace it. And we have our own built-in learning and development team to create more and more courses that people can benefit from. But we're going to talk more about that later.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Okay, so building off of that, we all know that another workplace trend that's arisen within the last few years is remote and hybrid work. How do you make sure employees are gaining skills when many of them aren't in the office in person?
Yeah, and it's funny because I actually work out of my home office. So I'm one, you know, our Cipher Learning started with just me in an apartment and gradually grew. And now we've got close to 200 people around the world, 23 countries. But it's a very distributed company. And being remote is actually more the rule than the exception at our company. And so, you know, to answer your question, you have to think about what is the primary difference between when you're remote and when you're not. And I think it's primarily around communication. So when you're in the office, you know, hey, I'm just going to grab a coffee, and you bump into someone and you chat with them, and hey, have you heard about this cool new thing? No, I didn't. Let me learn about it. You know, that thing happens quite commonly. So one of the things that we do is we make sure, well, we don't, it's not like we enforce it, but people typically talk a lot through the day, through multiple channels. We use Slack. So we've got lots of Slack channels where people are talking all the time. We've got people have videos, we have huddles. It's like really, really common for me to talk with 20 different people throughout the day. So I think the first thing is just make sure you've got tons of communication. If someone's like in isolation and, you know, you're talking with them once every few days, then yeah, that's probably a problem. So that's the first thing I would say. I think the second thing is that if you do adopt a learning platform, then it's a lot easier to engage people and make sure they either do the formal training or they're using the informal training capabilities that the company provides. So there is a level of monitoring and reporting that you can get. But I'm one of these people, I really think that so much of this is about culture. You know, the platform and the technology is like the icing on the cake. But I would say the first thing that you do is you build a culture of high communication, and that's the number one thing that you can really do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Once you have that foundation and that you've built that culture, do you think the technology that you implement is something that is really important to support that culture?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have started Cipher Learning. But yeah, I think it's really important because one of the things that people talk a lot about is friction. And if you put things in people's way to learn easily, then it just slows down the whole thing. So our feeling is, you know, culturally we support, you know, on-demand learning, formal training, compliance, the whole mishmash of different kinds of training. But then we have a platform in place which is really effective at making this frictionless. So I'll give you a little example about what we do at Cipher Learning. So the first thing, that when somebody first joins the company, they get automatically enrolled as part of onboarding into the onboarding course, which is all about Cipher Learning. And every single person takes this course, and it's pretty funny. There's lots of jokes and anecdotes and video welcomes from the team. So we make it really good fun. And one of the things that we definitely believe is that the social part of learning is super important. So we actually use our platform to encourage people to learn about each other, to form social learning groups, to share hints and tips. It's not meant to be just this very cold, isolated thing. So people take the onboarding course, and part of the onboarding is you take, there's a task that you do where you have to describe where you live and why everybody else would enjoy visiting your place in one line. And you can't continue throughout the course until you've done that. And it's hilarious. The kinds of responses that we get from people living all over the world always make me laugh out loud. And once you've taken the course, every new person who joins the course, you actually get to see their response as well. So first part is we start off onboarding. That's super efficient. And what we do is that we verify that you've understood certain things about the company as you go. So it's also gated. So by the time you go out the onboarding, you know what our products are, how many offices we've got, which countries we're in, et cetera, et cetera. But that's just the start. Then we want to get people up to speed in their various departments. So everyone is organized, is grouped into organizations. And we set up some automation in our learning platform. So everyone, once they've completed the onboarding, if they're in engineering, takes the Welcome to Engineering course. And automation is really key, because if this has to be done manually, it's just not going to get done. But you have a platform like ours with the automation, it's really easy to say, you start with the onboarding, then you go into Welcome to X, where X is your organization. Once you've taken that, if I'm in engineering, I know all about engineering, which is great. But then what you do is that you can start creating individual learning paths, which are more detailed sets of courses based on your particular job role. So you've got everyone in the company at the beginning, then based on your organization, you go into the next thing. Then, based on your job title, then you take some additional courses. And that's kind of like the funnel, if you like, in terms of how you join the company. But once you've joined the company, individual organizations are always creating new course content. So we'll have a new course from engineering, there'll be a new course from marketing. And once those are announced, you can either make them optional or you can make them automatic. So now we've got this continuous learning concept. It's not just about what happens during the onboarding part. And we even use our platform survey capabilities for things like, you know, how well do you think our platform is doing? That's an easy one. But we also did it for Halloween costume evaluation. So we had a little contest in the company through our learning platform about who had the best Halloween costume, which was a good test of our surveys. But the very last thing I want to mention is that we're really into something called competency-based learning. And what that means is for every skill that we would like you to learn, effectively to master at some point, you can create groups of competencies and you can tag the courses with the competencies that they teach and the competencies they assess. So a couple of simple examples. During onboarding, there's a set of 20 competencies which are associated with your expertise in Cipher Learning, in terms of what the products are, you know, where the offices are, you know, who the CEO is, etc. And as you go through the course and you're taking quizzes and everything else, we are assessing you on the mastery of all of 20 of those competencies. Similarly, when you go into engineering, if you're, say, a database engineer, there'll be 40 competencies that very detailed outline what you should master. And our platform is tracking that down to the individual competency level as you go. And then the cool part is, based on the gap analysis of what you want to know and what you should know, we actually automatically recommend courses for people to close those gaps. So, so I think the platform choice is actually really important. And it all comes down to how pleasant do you want to make, how easy it is you want the content to be manufactured, how well you want to attract competencies. But yeah, it's definitely a key thing.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's extremely personalized, because you not only the platform not only recommends content based on where people's skill levels and competencies are at, but also what they personally want to learn. So it's kind of a combination of those two. Yeah,
it's a combination of the organization you're in, because we group people into orgs like engineering, sales, marketing. So that tells us a little bit about you, so we can direct you along certain routes. Then based on your job title, tells us more about you. And then associated with job titles, there can be competencies. And as you mentioned, based on the competencies that you're meant to know versus the ones you've provably mastered, we can then make very targeted recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you for that. So I want to talk a bit more in depth about the ILP, which is obviously Cipher's product. So as I said earlier, we know that the ILP is it's a learning technology that integrates AI and machine learning into the learning experience and offers unique learning opportunities. So yeah. I think you've touched on this, Graham, already, but if there's anything you want to add about what kind of the unique benefits and opportunities for skill development come with the ILP.
Yeah, I would love to, because there is quite a lot of confusion about this, and people are familiar with terms like LMS, learning platform, LXP, now intelligent learning, ILP. Like, what are all these things? Like, do you provide an LMS? Do you integrate with an LMS? It's like all over the map. So I'm going to make it really, really clear. So, you know, in the old days, people used the term primarily LMS, learning management system. And the management part was there primarily because in the old days, a lot of it was command and control. So the emphasis was not so much on authoring great things or making them engaging or anything. It was more like, I'm going to manage it, so you have to take compliance scores A, B, and C. Very command and control. And a lot of the learning platforms in the market and business are still very command and control, where the administrator is the one that has 90% of the power, and the instructors, you know, don't get to do much. But then what happened is that people go, well, there's a lot more to it than just command and control. We want to make courses that are engaging, that they're gamified, they use automation to make cool things happen if you do great on a quiz, or we want adaptive learning, so advanced modules only appear if you've reached a certain level. There was a whole another level of requirements that came. And so some subset of those LMSs got better. And like in our case, our platform Matrix is a full-blown LMS and a lot more. And so the learning platform, we started calling Matrix as a learning platform because of competency-based learning, automation, gamification, all that kind of stuff. But then people started talking a lot more about personalized learning. And I've personally, pardon the pun, personally been talking about personal learning for a long time. Even on YouTube, there's a YouTube thing called The Future of Learning, Future of Education, that I did 12 years ago in Manila talking about this. So the general idea is that you would like for these platforms to become kind of your learning buddy or your learning assistant and help you in your journey. But for the platform to be able to help you, it needs to know your strengths and weaknesses down to a fine grain. And I'm going to come back to this fine grain in just a minute. Mm-hmm. And it needs to know about what courses and groups are available. It needs to know people who are very skilled at certain topics. And it needs to be able to also figure out, hey, if 10 other people wanted a skill and they did this video and they got better, that means the video is probably a good thing to recommend. Conversely, if 10 people watched it and it made no difference whatsoever, then why would I recommend that again? So the intelligent learning platform is a step above learning platform. It's something which becomes smarter. It supports the idea of learning goals. So a user, for example, can say, hey, I want to get better at this particular job. And you tell the system this as a goal, and then let the system then start doing the work of making the recommendations. So these are all supersets of each other. So a really good learning platform is a superset of an LMS. An intelligent learning platform is a superset of a just plain learning platform. So you would not use Matrix in addition to an LMS. You would use it instead of an LMS, but obviously it has a lot more capabilities. And the one thing I really want to underscore is the whole competency-based learning. Because competencies we view as the currency of knowledge. And I don't know if you've ever seen Khan Academy, but just take grade 1 mathematics or something like that. There's probably 100 different items under grade 1 math. And in Khan Academy, there's a little grid of checkboxes. And every time you show mastery of something, which normally means you've been assessed multiple times and you've done well, then that checkbox turns a different color. And when you've filled in all the checkboxes, that means effectively you've covered everything in grade 1 math. So we take that approach in Matrix. We allow you to create fine-grained competencies, attach them to quizzes, other assessment types, to the course content, even to job titles, and that allows us a very fine grained understanding of strengths and weaknesses. But I will say a majority of other platforms out there that talk about skills do not take this approach. So they will say you can tag something by saying this is good for marketing, and they can assess you on are you good at marketing, but they do not support this very fine level of detail. And we think that this is a critical component of having a rich learning ecosystem, is supporting this fine-grained skills tracking.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely. Do you feel that it also gives the learner a sense of efficacy for when they achieve these milestones? It can kind of drive learner engagement.
Yeah, I think it's really good, makes it a lot more fun. So one of the things is human beings really like things like bar charts and checkboxes and all the rest of it. So if you can say, hey, I want to get good at digital marketing, and you can see 40 checkboxes and 20 of them are already checked, you're like, I'm halfway there. And then you take a few more videos, you watch a video and you take a quiz and, hey, I'm 80% there. People love that. They're not so keen on, hey, I'm pretty good at digital marketing. That's it. It doesn't have that feeling of, fulfillment, satisfaction that you would otherwise get. It also means that the platform can do a much better job at recommendations, because if it knows that you're 90% there, but you really need to get good at logo design, then it can recommend you a video or a course about logo design, not just another general marketing course. So I think it can make better recommendations, and I think it's also more engaging for the learner.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was getting at. Okay, that's great. So I also want to mention that some of the most talked about topics in L&D right now, I'm finding, are learning within the flow of work and on-demand learning, also micro-learning and cohort-based learning. Can you talk a bit about how the ILP lends itself to these learning methods?
Yeah, certainly. And, Matrix supports all the learning approaches that you just mentioned, because they all make sense. They're all like different modes of learning. Sometimes I really want to learn this right now. Let me find an area where I can find that right now. Sometimes it's compliance. Hey, I've got to do this by the end of the week. Sometimes it's like you're learning with groups, and those are very fluid. A lot of them are not either or. Like you can do on-demand learning, but using groups, and you can post to a group where there's experts and get an answer very quickly, and that answer is retained for future reference. I would say one of the core things, though, is that for this to actually tie together, that's where competency-based learning really makes a big difference. Because if I want to learn something specifically related to a competency, like how do I design an icon, if I know who is good at designing icons, I might be able to put you into a social learning group where you can get that information right now. But if instead I want to do a video and I want to do just straight on-demand learning through the resources catalog, if that's tagged with icon design, I can get it there. So based on what I want to be able to get that information through multiple different channels. And then once I've mastered it, I'm going to record the fact that I'm now good at it for future purposes. So we really think that all of these modes of learning make good sense, but they need to be tied together somehow. And competencies as the currency of knowledge, we believe, is the best way to tie it all together.
Yeah, totally. Tying it all together seems imperative. And I also want to ask you, also in regards to, the kind of holistic approach of tying things together. So I want to ask you how an ILP can build an effective learning ecosystem, or how an ILP can help you build an effective learning ecosystem that offers solutions for today's workplace.
Yeah, I think that, as we've already discussed, there's lots of different ways to learn things. There is formal courses, there's simple videos, there's social learning, there's through chat rooms. There's a lot of different ways to learn. And the question is, where does that content come from? Because now we're moving a bit more into the whole learning ecosystem area. So yes. I'll tell you how we do it at Cipher Learning. So in Cipher Learning, we have an L&D team of our own. So we have a few people who are really good at instructional design. They're very good at engaging with leaders of the various organizations, asking them lots of questions. What do you want to teach next in your learning organization? How can we package that up? They're very good at figuring out what the underlying competencies are, because competencies are separate from content. The content basically supports the competencies. So we have an L&D team who does that, and that's really nice. But there's a lot of courses that there's no way we're going to create for ourselves. So there's going to be third-party content from providers like Go1 and LinkedIn and Udemy and Coursera, etc. So Matrix has seamless integration with a lot of different content catalogs. So people can pull in third-party content. That's part of the funnel, if you like, into the system. But we also want people to be able to create their own content. You know, if you have an organization where only the L&D team can ever create educational content, that's really going to tie the hands of a lot of people. So through Matrix, anyone can create a video, they can upload it, they can share it, can get ratings and reviews. It can get reported if it's bad, but fortunately we've never had an internal report. So we allow individuals to contribute, put it into the resources catalog, and then share it with other individuals. And we also have a lot of functionality related to social learning. So for example, anyone can create a public group or a private group. Those groups have their own dashboards, so they're first class, highly supported entities. It's just not an afterthought. Group dashboards, group automation, group resources. You can associate competencies with groups, so you know that this group is really good for marketing, and then that way we can pull together people who want to contribute in the field of marketing. So I do think, you know, a really big component of this is allowing third-party content, L&D team, organizations, but also individual contributors. All of that together brings that content into the funnel.
Okay, great. Yeah. And it sounds like it's also very useful for measuring progress because it's recorded at every step of the way, people's skills. So I've talked a lot about measuring learning with different executives recently, and just the importance of it and how it can be used to show the value of the L&D. And I feel like this, being able to measure the person's skill, competency, as you said, from the beginning to through all these levels to the end of the course, that's also an added value.
Yeah, we actually measure the competencies across every single touch point of the system. And so I'll give you, let's just say, for example, that somebody has a learning goal of, I want to get good at digital marketing. So there's a job title, digital marketing. There might be 50 competencies. And a variety of different courses will both teach and assess various parts of that competency, those competencies. So it's unlikely there's going to be one monolithic course that teaches you everything. So you might have got part of a course over here, another course over here. Maybe you watched the video, you did a little quiz. But all of those areas we're tracking, and we're tracking not only the fact that you got exposed to that content, but also as you were assessed in it, which could be written assessment, it could be informal assessment, just your boss saying, hey, you're really good at this, congratulations. It could be, you know, quiz, formal assessment. Every single data point is accumulated and displayed in a goal dashboard. So a student can click on digital marketing and it will show them a dashboard that shows them all the competencies, their current level of mastery, what percentage they are, they're getting closer over time, a little time-based widget. There's even a tab that they can click where they can connect through a Q&A form with every other person with the same goal. And that's an example about bringing people together with common purpose and allowing them to interact and help with each other. So if I've got a goal of being good digital marketing, I can click a button and say, hey, everyone, I've got a question about logo design, and I can see everybody else's response. And the cool thing from a compliance perspective is you can click on any competency and it will show you a timeline of every single time you got exposed to it, every single assessment, how you scored in the assessment, how it was calculated. So for companies where traceability and accountability is important, once again, this is why competency-based learning is so important, because it allows you to see exactly how you accumulated that mastery for each individual competency.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. That makes a lot of sense. To go back a bit to learning ecosystems, you may have touched on this already, but I just want to make sure that we kind of give an overview of the learning ecosystem and what the benefits are that are unique to the user or an employee who is learning within a learning ecosystem versus a more siloed learning environment.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think when you've got a learning ecosystem, what that means is that you have a variety of different content from a variety of different people, including your own internally generated content or your recommended content, that it's all being tied together consistently, so it all kind of connects and makes sense, that it's being measured, it's being reported, and you, the learner, can actually direct your own learning. So, I'll give you a spectrum. There are some companies where the only content that's available to anyone formally is from a third-party source, like LinkedIn Learning. So pretty much, yeah, as long as it's on LinkedIn Learning, you're in good shape, but it's not usually being reported on very much. It's not being linked to competencies. So you don't really know too much about what's going on out there, except that people have taken a course on marketing and whatever else. And that's like one extreme. Another example of that would be all the content is done by our own internal L&D. So if you happen to get on the L&Ds on their schedule and you're lucky enough for them to create a course for you, then that's great. But otherwise, that's just tough, and you're going to have to go to hunt something down on YouTube in order to educate yourself, which is not bad. There's incredible stuff on YouTube, but it's not necessarily what you want in a large company. On the other hand, if you have a company like Cipher Learning and you're using a platform like Matrix, you can have the best of all worlds. You can have some content from third parties, which is licensed off-the-shelf content. You can have some content from your L&D team. You can have some content created by maybe the engineers or the marketing people themselves using a simple authoring tool. You can have individual learners interacting with other learners and bypassing any kind of formal materials whatsoever. So you basically give people a lot more options. That's really, I think, the key thing. There's a lot more ways to learn, and it's all being tracked through competency-based learning, which is obviously a nice thing. But I do think that having one or two people whose primary role is to kind of nurture the ecosystem is pretty important. It's not going to happen on its own. But I think having an appropriate platform can make it much easier to get the ball rolling, so to speak. And if you look at this diagram here, you've got the third-party content, building your own content, you're gathering the competencies, you're tagging the content, and this thing kind of becomes a virtuous circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, the platform brings together a lot of moving parts. And I know you were also talking about the social aspects of the platform and kind of the importance of creating a culture of learning. So can you talk a bit more about how the Cipher and the Matrix helps create this culture of learning and encourages social interaction?
Certainly. So I would say, as far as the actual product Matrix goes, there's a lot of collaboration features built into it. So whether it's allowing you to create a group, and our groups are way better than, say, Facebook groups. So they're very full-featured, very attractive. Creating groups, inviting people to groups, using automation to automatically put people in groups. So that's quite a cool feature. Let's just say that I want to create a group for, hey, everyone who's in the sales department in these 3 job titles, I want to work with them collaboratively. In the sales organization, I can create a group and I can say automatic membership. If you're in the sales department and your job title is in ABC, automatically add you. So without actually needing anyone to go, oh, I didn't know this group was there, you can actually put together groups automatically. And then inside that group, you might want to say, well, these are the 12 competencies that we're going to discuss in this group. Pull up the competency editor, go click, 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 done. And now the ILP knows you've got a group, it's filled with these people, and these competencies are ones that are going to be discussed in there. So later on, if a new person joins and they need to master this particular skill, it will actually automatically recommend them that group. Say, hey, if you join this group, you might get better at it. I'm not aware of any other platform that does that, so it's somewhat of a unique feature. But that's an example that Matrix makes it easy to create groups, to populate the groups, to tag the groups with competencies, and to recommend those groups. So there's one example. You know, other simple things like having built-in chat into our system. You'd be amazed how many learning platforms do not have integrated chat. It actually kind of blows my mind. So just have integrated chat is just a small little thing. Another thing is something interesting that we did right when the pandemic first started. So we had a lot of people who used to be in the office using our platform and now suddenly we're at home. And when you're at home, if you log into a typical learning platform, there's no indication whatsoever whether there's 1 person in the course or 1,000 person in the course. There's no life to it, if you like. It's just a flat, dead screen. So one of the things that we added within a few weeks of the pandemic is some fun visual indication of what's going on in the platform. So if you have a course where there's 100 people taking the course right now, we have this little green little light that starts flashing bigger and bigger and faster to show you visually, hey, there's other colleagues in this course right now. Yeah, oh, that's cool. I go into the course and you can actually see a widget spinning that's telling you everything that's going on. Joanna just, got 20 game points. Frederick just, submitted something. Derek just finished this module. And so now you feel like, hey, I'm actually part of a community. Whereas before, and we're the only platform that does that, by the way, as far as I know. But it engenders a sense of community, which I think is an important thing. And the last thing I'm going to mention, which I think is another unique thing, is if you have a learning goal, which could be to get good at particular competency or get good at a particular job, everyone who has the same goal can click a tab to see everybody else with the same goal and interact with them. So rather than thinking, hey, Edtech is a way to remove humans and make it all done by artificial intelligence or something, our feeling is you can actually use Edtech to bring people together, because how else would I know who's got the common goal in the company? It's not, if you are in a multinational company with 100,000 employees, how could you possibly know that? Even if you go to the office, there's no way for you to know that. But the platform does know that, and it can actually help bring people together.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was thinking, because it sounds like it really helps bring people from different departments together that maybe wouldn't have interacted before if they're taking the same course, or even people in different countries that, they never would have met. But that's so important to creating a culture of learning, to have this social aspect and have everyone coming together on the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really important. Do you think the gamification aspect also is helpful in that it promotes kind of a friendly competition between users?
Yeah, and I'll share a funny anecdote about gamification. So as I mentioned, Cipher Learning is unique because we have a platform Neo and platform Matrix. Neo's K through 20 and Matrix is business. They're the same platform, just branded with different business models. So when we released gamification, we released it years ago. And we have quite a sophisticated implementation that uses automation. So at any point in the system, based on almost anything, you can give people's points and badges towards games. You can have multiple games. You can level up in games. It's a really quite a sophisticated feature. And we thought that children would like it the most, followed by higher ed, followed by corporate. That's what we anticipated. And it's actually the opposite way around. So it's businesses that have embraced gamification way more than higher ed. And it's actually children who are the ones that have embraced it the least, which is quite interesting, like counterintuitive to me. But businesses adopt technology much faster than K through 20. It's quite obvious to us. And every time we add a new feature, businesses gobble it up, whereas the K through 12 much slower to adopt, much more cautious. How do I disable this feature? I'm not ready for it yet. And what we've found is that having gamification is very, very effective. There's no question. And I think it's what you say. It's the friendly competition. People they like to see themselves on a leaderboard, no question. And it doesn't have to be, bad competition. Like, oh, you're not doing best. We look down upon you. It's really just fun stuff. And we have team gamification, for example. So you can say, hey, individually, you're number 10, but your team is number 1. So we can have games where it's the sales team versus the marketing team, or engineering, or executives versus their reports, or something like that. And you can have games based on participation and also games based on mastery, for example. So it's not just like there's one game in the system. Even within a single course, you might have 3 games running: attendance, participation, and mastery, as an example. But it's definitely one of our most popular features, and it's really good fun when it's done right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to, we have a couple of questions. This has been extremely valuable information, everything you've said. So I'm really happy we've been able to have this conversation. I'm going to look at some of the Q&As that we have. We have this one, I believe you've already answered. Your content, if the content is homegrown or if it comes from outside the system, and you said it's three styles. It comes from homegrown within the system, curated from outside sources, and also users can create their own content.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple of additional bits of detail. So we're very standards oriented. So if you have some existing content that's SCORM, you can just upload it into the system. If you're using LTI, Learning Tools Interoperability, which allows you to plug in third-party content through an LTI channel, then we also support LTI. And in fact, if you create a course inside of Matrix, we can actually expose that course through LTI so it can be consumed in other LMSs, which I think is quite a unique feature as well. But yeah, you can use a built-in authoring tool. You can use a SCORM tool. If you like content from Go1 or Coursera, we're about to release edX integration. It's transparent, so you can actually browse the Coursera catalog from inside of Matrix. And if you enroll into a Coursera course, it appears in your Matrix dashboard. And that could be an edX course, an Udemy course, a LinkedIn course, and one that's authored entirely inside of Matrix. So it really gives you tremendous flexibility of where that content comes from.
Yeah, that's great. I also have someone asking, so within the courses, we talked a lot about these different competency levels. Are these skill taxonomies pre-built within the courses?
So most people that we've talked to so far prefer to build their own taxonomies, simply because so many companies have different things they want to emphasize. That being so currently we don't have any pre-built ones, but later this year we're going to be releasing a couple of very popular open source taxonomies, one out of the United States and one out of Europe. And we don't think that anyone's just going to say, that's all I need. I think people are going to use that as a starting point or as a point of inspiration. because companies really do like to control their own competencies. I know that we do. Like if I said, what are the competencies for an engineer? They might be a little bit different from some European standard. But we certainly understand the value of those. So part of what we do is provide services to our customers. So if somebody says, hey, I love this competency-based stuff, we've got some internal competencies that we've been kicking around, but they haven't been formalized, we can work with companies, refine those competencies. There's a competency editor, or you can upload it from a CSV or a spreadsheet, upload those into the system, and then work on a services basis with aligning those competencies to your existing and future training content.
Okay, so you work together with the client basically to come up with a taxonomy that is specific to each company, because companies and organizations all have different goals and obviously different skill sets that are needed.
Yeah, and some companies are bound by industry standards. So, for example, if you work for the Australian Water Board, then there is an actual Australian Water Board taxonomy of, I think it's around 1,000 competencies. So a platform like Matrix is heaven, because without having a platform that supports fine-grained competencies, there's no way for you to actually tie your formal learning back to an industry standard like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like some organizations and companies probably struggle with, they want to upskill and reskill, but they don't have an exact idea of every skill level and every specific skill that they want to increase. But actually going through the process of creating that taxonomy with Cipher would also be a way for that company to organize their thoughts and, decide for themselves where people should be at each skill level.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And from the very early days, we've always had a very strong Edtech services component to our business. So we don't just provide the product and say, hey, go for it. It was very obvious early on. People would say, this product looks amazing. It does everything I want, but how do I get started? Or, I don't have the skills in-house right now. How would you recommend I hire someone? Which obviously slows down our sales cycle. We'd like to be able to say, hey, not only can you get the product, but we can provide you a very strong Edtech team, which, by the way, is global. So it talks tons of different languages. Your local Edtech team can work hand in hand with you and develop all this stuff without you necessarily having to have all of that expertise in-house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. Let me just see if there are any other questions here. Yes, just a couple of housekeeping things. Yes, this webinar will be available in 24 hours on the CLN website. And yes, you can request a demo by clicking the request demo link in the platform. So, Graham, since we have a bit more time, I do want to ask, I'll just a bit about kind of what are some really exciting things that you're currently working on within Cipher this year, and then where do you see the company going in the future, and how do you see you and Cipher kind of responding to needs that arise in L&D departments in the future?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things, is talking about the future.
Yeah.
So, we've always been innovators. I never wanted to build a company with a Me Too learning platform. And I know, especially in the world of K through 20, that I've got 2 young boys, so I'm passionate about kids' education. People always talked about the idea of personalized learning or adaptive learning. And people would wax lyrical about a platform where you could have courses and recommendations and social learning, all this kind of stuff. And as of right now, our Neo product is literally the only learning platform in the world that actually does all that stuff. So it's really enjoyable for me personally to have an aspiration as a company and actually see our dreams come true. That being said, though, the reason that we use the term intelligent learning platform is that we think these platforms are going to get smarter, and smarter and more helpful. So having skills development and have automated recommendations and tracking of mastery and all that kind of stuff is one part of the ILP vision, but there's a lot more to intelligent learning platform than just that. So there is things like recommending really good courses, materials to instructors who want to build a new course. Hey, if I'm going to build a new course on something, if the system said, hey, here are 20 videos that are really good that you might want to incorporate, that's very helpful for me. Automatic tagging of content. So if I upload a video, automatically transcribe it, find the keywords, automatically make them searchable and taggable. We're going to be releasing that feature very soon. Automatically detecting at-risk students, learners who are struggling a little bit, especially in the world of universities. They don't want to lose those students. They want to find them early and then intervene and help them to be successful. So I would say, part of what we're doing is we're adding more and more functionality under the intelligent part of intelligent learning platform. We've also been working on a project to see if we can automate creation of video content, which I know sounds very science fiction, because when you think about video, you normally think about a human animator or a studio full of people building things. But we're working on ways to actually create videos automatically based on guidance from an instructor. So that's just another example of something which comes under the heading of intelligent learning platform. But it's really exciting time. I think that when Apple releases Apple Glass or whatever it's going to be called, that will probably be the first truly consumer-friendly augmented reality device. We can see all kinds of opportunities for incorporating that into our platform as well.
Yeah, that would be really great. I have one more question coming in. Can Cipher Learning's platform integrate with other applications so that the learning content can be accessed in the learner's workflow rather than in a separate application?
So the answer is yes, and I'll tell you how. So there is a very popular standard called LTI, which is short for Learning Tools Interoperability. And what it allows any third party to create whatever they want. It could be, take a crossword puzzle. It could be a virtual reality simulator. It could be anything. The tool itself would be hosted by the producer of the tool, but there's a simple standard where you put a link to that tool and it automatically appears either inside of a window or in a separate tab within the learning platform. And we've been big supporters of LTI for at least five or 6 years now, to the point where when you build a course on our platform, it automatically becomes a learning tool that can be then used in other people's learning platforms. And we have lots of customers that are publishers. That's a really useful feature. Interestingly enough, most business LMS do not support LTI because LTI originally came out of the academic world, not out of the business world. So we're kind of ahead of the game in a lot of regards. And we have a built-in library of like 300 LTI compliant tools. So if you're in a course and you want to bring in a third-party tool, you can just open up LTI tools, scroll through it graphically, click, 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 and incorporate that tool directly into the interface of Matrix.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. And I feel like that would also just help a lot with the social learning aspect because it would be so easy for people to share the content with one another. Yeah,
and you're right, especially if you're, now whether or not your company wants you to share your courses through LTI is another matter. But yeah, I mean, for publishers, we have companies that build courses and sell them, and that's their business. So our LTI feature allows them to create courses that have gamification, adaptive learning, automation, all these things. And through a simple link, they can sell it to a company that's using a different LMS. And as long as that LMS supports LTI, that publisher's courses, along with all that great stuff, would automatically appear in somebody else's product.
Mm-hmm. Wow, interesting. Yeah. So when you kind of start collaborating with a company, do you? I know you've said like you and the company develop, or the university or school kind of can develop customized content, do you also take into account, for example, if one company or organization wants more gamification than another, or they want to focus more on demand learning within the flow of work, can you adapt the programs to fit each of these needs?
Yeah, we act primarily as mentors to companies. So although we have the capability of generating our own content, that's not really very scalable. So what we prefer to do is we'll say, we come in as the Edtech experts. We know competency-based learning. We know instructional design. We know how our tool works. We know all the tricks of the trade, lessons learned, best practices. And we'll go in and say, we'll team up with some of your staff members. We'll have some brainstorming sessions, and we'll come up with the approach that's best for your company. So very early on in the engagement process, we want to learn, what the company's goals are, what really matters to them, what's their 1 year, 3 year, 5 year vision for learning inside their company. And then based on that, we'll recommend, various approaches.
Yeah, so it's very customized. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any more questions. This has been extremely valuable information. So I'm really excited we got to talk. Graham, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think I would just end by saying, we did cover a lot of material. If people are interested in learning a bit more about Cipher Learning or taking a guided tour or scheduling a demo, just go to www.cipherlearning.com. The site is beautiful. It's multilingual. You'll be able to see screenshots, details, schedule a demo, anything that you want. And obviously, we would love you to become customers of Cipher Learning.
Yes, makes sense. Thank you for adding that. Great. So thank you so much to everybody who attended the webinar, and thank you so much, Graham. This has been extremely useful information, as I said. I'm going to end here, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Bye.
Of course. Thank you.